Welcome to Two Women Who Give a Puck. My name is Sarah,
And I'm Tara.
and we are here to highlight the experience of females in hockey, both players and coaches, as well as to provide tangible action items to create a more positive experience in that space. So, in today's episode, we are going to be going over some key takeaways and tangible action items from the story that we shared last week from a Minnesota female hockey coach. Now, if you haven't listened to that story yet, make sure to use the links in the show notes to give that story a listen. Otherwise, a quick recap is that it was a true story we shared from a female hockey coach in Minnesota who found out literally by refreshing a web page that she had been replaced as the head coach for her daughter's team by a less experienced man with zero explanation. She found out the night of tryouts with her daughter, and her daughter was next to her and asked, Mommy, why aren't you the head coach? And she didn't have an answer because she truly didn't know. So it was a tough story to share, and sadly, it's not a rare one. And that is the reason why she chose to share her story. So give that story a listen and then continue on with this episode to understand some of the really valuable key takeaways and tangible action items that we can learn from this story. So we want to go over a few key takeaways from this story as well as actually call out the tangible action items for various groups. And so we have about 7 key takeaways that we want to go through. So the first one being gender bias in youth hockey is real and widespread. So this coach's experience is not an isolated incident. Female coaches across Minnesota and nationwide are truly routinely mistrusted, undervalued, and replaced without cause, often by less qualified male coaches. This is a systemic pattern, not a one-off situation. And that was the main reasoning why we did want to share this story on the podcast, because it's not the first time that we've heard this. It's not the first time that our
No,
previous
it's
guests.
one of several stories we've heard this fall/winter.
Yes.
Yep.
Number 2, lack of transparency and feedback harm coaches. So she was removed from her head coaching role with no prior feedback, no warning, and no explanation. So this is both unprofessional and emotionally damaging, and it eliminates opportunities for learning and improvement.
Yep.
So this is a huge takeaway for coaches, all coaches.
Yep. Male, female,
Yep.
otherwise.
Yes.
Like, feedback is important, good, bad. It helps people grow. It helps people to have reasonable expectations. It helps people to understand, how they fit into a system. Like, feedback is truly important to being successful as a coach. Another important takeaway is that the messages that this type of behaviors send to young girls is very concerning. When we take somebody that's qualified and capable and experienced and we replace them with somebody that's less qualified and less experienced, that's hard enough. But when we do it to a female in front of little girls and we replace them with a male, it impacts their view of what a leader looks like, what a coach looks like, and how much a female can contribute, and at what point in time do people stop thinking her contributions and her expertise is worthwhile.
Right. And this is something we heard from Chris and Ashley when possibly on our podcast, but I know
In our
at least in our
conversations.
conversations offline is that it's very common regardless of if it's 10U, 12U, 15U, but when a female has an opportunity to coach a travel A team,
Yep.
even if it's a 10U, 12U, these are still youth. That tends to be one of kind of the trigger points of her being replaced.
Yep.
And so that is showing our girls that it's okay, or females are capable to a certain point.
Yep. And then after that, they're not capable at the highest levels, which is incorrect. Another takeaway, and this is really important to the decision makers, is that the emotional impact of these decisions is real. And it's not just for the coach, but it's also for the kids. But coaches, there's confusion, there's, loss of identity, there's grief, there's feelings of trauma. Losing a coaching role especially can feel like feel like a death for some people. Like for this particular individual we're talking about today, that's how she explained it. It also can damage your relationship with a sport you love. And then, when you do that, there's the loss of all of the future contributions of that individual
Right.
and all of the experience that she could share and all of the experience that is just going to waste now. And then community and support networks are critical. When you have someone to reach out to and get feedback from and support you and give you ideas and help you move forward, that makes such a difference. You're not alone then. For our individual in this situation, she was able to reach out to other female coaches that she had worked with previously. She was able to talk to Ashley with USA Hockey. She was able to talk to other friends in her hockey community that kind of helped walk her through some difficult moments and give her some feedback on different angles to think about as she was looking for more information. And that makes it a lot easier to walk through those difficult times when there's people with you.
For sure. And then another key takeaways for female coaches is that we must advocate for ourselves. So, as women, we often assume blame first. I know I
Yep.
personally do that all the time. It's like, oh, something is wrong. Yes, it was my fault.
Yep.
It's like, and I have to be kind of like talked into the fact that maybe it was not my fault a lot of times. So women, we often assume blame first, but her story highlights the importance of requesting feedback, of gathering information, challenging the narratives that you've been given that they maybe aren't as accurate as they appear to be, and then really ensuring that your voice is heard.
Yep.
Last key takeaway would be for the boards, really reflecting and possibly reforming your practices. So boards often allow subjective opinions, stereotypes, or gut feelings to overshadow facts and performance. And many decisions would not stand if the genders were reversed, which we talked about. Like, imagine this coach as a 6 foot tall male. Would you be making that same decision? And I believe a lot of boards in their policies have words written in a way to say that hearsay or subjective opinions will not sway their decisions on coaches, on direction for the association. So making sure that we're truly walking that
Yeah.
walk, and we're taking actions that reflect our policies and procedures.
Do some tangible action items that we're taking away from this story for female coaches are advocacy and communication. So requesting a formal feedback session anytime you're coaching. So, whether it's mid-season or end of season, if you're replaced as a coach, asking for feedback on why it happened, and then documenting your coaching successes. You should be able to share what skill development looks like and how you've made that happen with the individuals you've worked with. Document what parents have said in their reviews. Keep track of the players you've coached and how they've grown, because those things matter, right? If you are in a situation where you're asked to, defend your ability to coach, which some people get asked that, and I know there's a lot of associations that use an application process. Have that information available. Keep track of it for yourself so that it is at your fingertips and it's easy to say, I have done all of these things and here's my support, and make it hard for people to say no to you. And then finally, ask for written explanations. Ask them to put in writing what their decision is and why it's their decision, because it's a lot harder for them to support something that they've written than it is for them to just, like, well, I didn't actually say that, or they misunderstood what I said, or, but in writing, it makes it a lot, it's more black and white. It's more difficult for them to sidestep it. So, and then finally, gather direct data from parents, from your other coaches that you're on the ice with, maybe your coaching director, players, if you're in a situation where that's appropriate. Be able to speak to those inaccurate narratives, have the information available so that you can do that. In terms of preparation and protecting yourself, request clarity on the coaching process, the selection process before tryouts. Hold people accountable to that,
Right.
how you decide your coaches. And that also gives you an opportunity to present some of your information that we just talked about. Confirm what communication looks like in terms of selecting coaches. When are decisions being made? And who are the decision makers, and who is communicating that information? And then keep a record of the conversations, including emails with the coaches or with the association, with maybe a coaching director or a travel director or a board member, whomever you might be talking to. Just keep track of those things in case you need them later to support yourself. And then finally, build a community. And we've advocated for that almost every episode we've had. But it is so important that you have people that you can talk to about your experiences, about the things you're struggling with, about things that are going well. There's a bunch of coaching support groups available there's one through USA Hockey, there's one through Minnesota Hockey. You can also create a support group within your association. We have one in our local association that we meet probably monthly or so during the hockey season,
Mhm.
and it's nothing formal. It's just like, let's go out and, get a drink, or let's, just go get coffee or whatever it might be, and just hang out and have someone to kind of bounce ideas off of, kind of vent to a little bit, have a few laughs about the
Yep.
ridiculousness that is the hockey season. But then you get to know those people, and it's easier for you to ask questions later.
Right.
And I will say, at the beginning of this year, there was several email threads going around in our association's female group about, I want to do this, or how do you do that, or even questions about equipment, or there was a lot of people using that resource, excuse me, which was nice to see.
Yep.
And then finally, find male allies as well. They're just as important. They can advocate for you, and they're unfortunately be taken a little bit more seriously at times by the association or the board. While female support is great, male support is just as important.
Right. So some tangible action items for hockey associations and boards. So around policy and process improvements, create a standardized coach selection rubric based on objective criteria. So experience, certifications, feedback, whatever that might look like within your association that you can use to base your coaching decisions off of. Require annual performance reviews for all coaches. So important. And then I would say also make sure to share those reviews, positive and negative. It's important for them to hear, any negative feedback so they can learn from it. But it's also just as important, and maybe even more important, for coaches to hear what worked well.
Yep.
Because that's good to know, what should I do more of? Like, what did parents enjoy? What did players enjoy? Adding to the positive is huge.
Yep.
Like, getting rid of those negative experiences is important, but adding to that positive makes those kids want to come back again and again. It makes sure that they have fun, and when kids are having fun, they learn better.
Right. And the season gets long, and there's ups and downs, and so sometimes you just need that like positive reinforcement, like,
Yes.
hard day, not a hard season. Like,
Right.
we got this.
Right. That reminder of like, okay, I am doing something right.
Yep.
When you're feeling like nothing is working, your team hasn't won a game in however long, and you
Or
keep
there's just you can't, no matter what you try, you can't get the breakout to work.
right, or you just can't please a parent no matter
Yep.
what happens.
Yep.
So yes, getting that positive feedback can keep your coaches going, especially again those completely volunteer youth coaches. It's important, very important. And then mandate that any coach who is not renewed receives written feedback and an explanation. So a big part of this story was that there was no feedback, no explanation.
Yep.
And so that's important. And then, so hockey boards and association, so kind of a bias reduction. Provide board training on unconscious bias, specifically related to gender and coaching stereotypes. So I believe with Chris Wing's episode, she talked about how she has done presentations for boards on this topic. So she would be a great resource to reach out to and have her stop by,
Yeah.
if you're bored.
Talk about this before as well. We have, maybe not consciously, but we have different expectations. We, being general, have different expectations of what skills and abilities little boys have versus little girls have. And that is another one of these bias things that we don't probably think about, but we have seen it in the way that little boys and little girls are treated in like early mite practices. And like we need to step in and say, no, they're here as hockey players, same,
Right.
same idea. Yep.
Yeah. If that's happening to the little girls, it's happening to the big girls who are they're coaching.
Yep.
So test decisions for bias. So would we treat a male coach with the same resume the same way? So again, that's whole, like, picture this as a 6 foot, tall male coach and bounce the facts up against that image in your mind, and would we make the same decision?
Yeah.
And then communicate standards. So set clear timelines for notifying coaches of their status before roster posting. Ensure all coaching changes include a conversation, not a surprise announcement. So just that extra communication. And then create culture improvements. So create female coaching pathways, including leadership development and head coach pipelines. So, something easy within our association is, as Tara talked about earlier, is that female support group.
Mm.
So create that for your female coaches and give them a an opportunity to develop, and maybe even get a mentor coach who maybe is a male coach at the younger ages, who, intentionally develop those female coaches and give them those opportunities. I know I would do that myself as a female coach, coaching on the girls' side, but I don't know, how often that's really intentionally happening.
No,
Anyway, and if
it should though.
and if it was someone else and not, myself as a female, would it happen? And would those female coaches get taken, under the more experienced coach's wing as much as I did
Yeah.
for them? Because it was very important to me. And then culture improvement. So promote the ADM and positive coaching models to reduce misalignment between traditional and modern coaching expectations. So I believe both Chris and Ashley talked about in our episodes that so many of the female coaches, they want to learn. Like they're very into learning and doing things right. And so they are taking the USA Hockey's ADM and the positive coaching model, to heart. And oftentimes that can make them look different. And sometimes just looking different equals bad.
Yeah, we had this conversation about the ADM the other day. It's like I'm a huge proponent of, and then for those that aren't familiar, the ADM is the American Development Model that USA Hockey preaches and uses for developing hockey player skills. I love it. I think it's great. I think it forces kids to, develop physically and mentally while they're practicing. It's a little more fun for them as well because it involves more game-based playing
Right.
versus
Skating around
cone drills. But you question it when you watch other teams practice sometime, and it looks less like that and more like traditional cone hockey. I noticed we were at the rink recently, and there was a high school team, and they had their stations, and they were doing station-based ADM work, and I was like, "Okay, good."
Yeah.
Like, even the big kids are doing it.
Yeah. Even NHL teams
Yeah.
do small area games too. So it's like if it's good enough for them, I think it's good enough for our, our 6-year-olds, our 8-year-olds, our 10-year-olds, our 15-year-olds.
Yep.
Like, yeah, there's something to it. But I think it is more females kind of latch on to that than maybe the male coaches who, our society, it's more like gives males that I know what I'm doing. I don't need to learn kind of
And that's very generous
confidence.
speaking.
Yes. Yes.
And then finally, our action items for parents and allies in the hockey community. First and foremost, speak up. Advocate for transparency in decision making, especially when something doesn't feel right. Support your coaches, both male and female, but specifically the female ones, publicly. It matters. And, you might have a coach you love, and if no one's advocating for that coach, he or she may not be back. And then hold boards accountable to their processes. Have them explain the decisions they've made. If a coach, like in the individual that shared her story with us in her situation, when she's replaced to the surprise of everybody, including her and her team, and replaced with a coach that isn't as qualified, speak up, ask those questions, make the board share what's going on. Because if it was truly a personality thing with a board member, or if it was something that happened on the ice, or it was something that happened off the ice, like, make them share that information, because that's the only way change is going to happen, is when they know that they're going to have to be held accountable for the things that they do. Also, model respect for girls. Talking to players about what happened and making sure that they're aware that leadership shouldn't be a gender thing, right? It shouldn't be male or female. Leadership is a skill that anyone can practice. And just because decisions like this are made, it doesn't impact their ability to be a leader in the future. And then with that, encourage these young girls to coach, to be leaders, to speak up when they see something that's not right. And then finally, engage in solutions. So attend board meetings, volunteer, join a committee. In our situation, with our our association and our female coaches group, it's not a association group. A female coach parent stepped up and said, "I don't wanna be alone. Let's do this." And so it's completely separate from the workings of our association normally. So there's so many different ways that you can get involved, but people have to get involved if they want change to happen.
Right. So if you found today's episode meaningful, please share it with someone in your hockey community because truly these conversations matter.
If you have a great story of how advocating has made changes in your association, we would love to hear that.
Yes,
So
because we would love ideas.
yes. We all want.
So to end the podcast, I want to remind all you ladies out there that we belong in hockey and we deserve to be a part of the greatest game in the world.
And don't forget to invite somebody else in.